Good evening. If you can't see my face, I'm sorry, my computer is big. I would like to first start with this. Hold on, let me make sure my volume's up and that it's not going to blast your ears out either. So you can see he has a slight lisp as he ends. As you can imagine, that's King George. This is not exactly period accurate. It's a parody. But tonight I am talking about declaring our independence, what came with that, and the general history. So, to start with, here's our outline. We're first going to go through what started the idea. We will next move on to the Committee of Five, presenting the first draft, the official signing and redistribution of the Declaration, what the British thought, and then we will conclude. Sound fair? So first we start with what started the idea? Well, that is slightly easy to answer, believe it or not. You have a Mr. Richard Henry Lee from the colony of Virginia. Now, this guy, meet him. He's cool looking. He was born in the year 1732 in Virginia and attended the Wakefield Academy in England, before traveling Europe and then returning to Virginia in 1752 when he was 20. He served as a justice of the peace for 1 year, then upgraded, in a sense, to the House of Burgesses. He was appointed to represent Virginia in the Continental Congress in August of 1774. He authored the Lee Resolution in 1776. He went from Congress to Virginia senator in 1789, and then he died on June 19, 1794. Pretty simple history on this guy. Back to June 7, 1776, when our friend Richard Lee stood up to talk to the delegates in the Second Continental Congress. But hold up a moment. What is the Lee Resolution that was mentioned on the slides? Right there. Well, it contained 3 parts: a Declaration of Independence, a call to form foreign alliances, and a plan for confederation. This is what Richard Henry Lee proposed to the delegates of the Continental Congress, in accordance to what his fellow delegates had discussed in the previous months leading up to this. To quote him, that these united colonies are and of right ought to be free and independent states. Virginia felt very strongly about breaking away from Great Britain. This resolution shook some of the delegates to their very cores. 4 days later, on June 11th, a Committee of 5 was formed. So, next we talk about the cough. The Committee of 5. So who was the Committee of 5? The men chosen were Robert Livingston, a delegate from New York; Roger Sherman, a delegate from Connecticut; John Adams, delegate from Massachusetts; Benjamin Franklin, a delegate from Pennsylvania; and Thomas Jefferson, a delegate from Virginia. You may have heard of some of these gentlemen. You may have never recognized any of these names in your life. At that point, you might want to go study your history textbooks. But what exactly was the COF, or Committee of 5, for? I am so glad you asked. Not that any of you did, but you know. According to an essay published on constitutingamerica.org by Winfield H. Rose, they were in charge of drafting the Declaration, even if the delegates had not made any decisions on the Lee Resolution. They had not made any choices, so to speak. So they formed this small committee to go and here, just draft this up really quick. And if we like it, we'll continue with the Lee resolution. If not, we'll just pretend this never happened. Even though all 5 members had been tasked with writing out this document, Thomas Jefferson was the member selected to write it out. Now, there are a couple different things thought out on how he was selected. Some think that they voted and John Adams had a conversation with him about it. Others think that maybe he just wrote with John Adams back and forth, or they just talked privately. However that came about, this is what the conversation is rumored to be. This is from Robert McGloin's book. Oh, hold on. I forgot to put that in my notes. This is from Robert McGloin's book, Deciphering Memory, John Adams and the Authorship of the Declaration of Independence. Quote, in a letter dated August 22nd, 1822, to the once mistrusted Timothy Pickering, Adams recalled that he and Jefferson had formed a subcommittee to draft a Declaration of Independence. Jefferson had magnanimously asked Adams to write it out, but Adams had refused. I will not, he said. But Jefferson persisted. You should do it. Adams refused again. Oh, no. Jefferson responded, why will you not? You ought to do it. To this, Adams replied once more, I will not. Why? Demanded Jefferson. Reasons enough, Adams countered. What can be your reasons? Jefferson asked. Reason first, you are a Virginian, and a Virginian ought to appear at the head of this business. Reason second, I am obnoxious, suspected, and unpopular. You are very much otherwise. Reason third, you can write 10 times better than I can. Well, said Jefferson, if you are decided, I will do as well as I can. Very well, concluded Adams. When you've drawn it up, we will have a meeting. This, according to this book, published in 1998, is the conversation that happened between these two. We don't know if it was in front of people or if it was just those two. Whatever it was, Jefferson was the one to drop the Declaration, and the days following this conversation found him sitting at a desk, writing and writing and writing. He struggled over this document and what he came out with. He sought to provide a, quote, expression of the American mind, unquote. In the end, he sent his first completed draft to Benjamin Franklin and John Adams for their viewing on June 28th, and once they had made their edits, he sent it to the Continental Congress. So now we move into presenting the first draft. And you see it in quotation marks. For those writers here, you know that when you write, you've got a first draft, a second draft, and a third draft. Those drafts are your first draft, the unedited, glorious version of your paper, writing, email, all that. You then have a second draft, and so on. Each version edited. Now, it's in first draft quotation marks because technically it is not Jefferson's first draft. As stated before, he sent it to Benjamin Franklin and John Adams to preview it first, to make their little edits. So they did, but it's the first draft because this is the first draft that Congress has seen. So now we move into this. July 2nd, 1776. The representatives from each state gathered, and Thomas Jefferson and the other members of the COF presented the first draft to the whole of Congress. It was technically his second draft, but again, I explained that. So right here you see them. You see this picture in representing them signing the Declaration, but this is not them signing the Declaration. This is the members of the COF showing and presenting the written document to the other members of Congress, to John Hancock. You can see the different members: Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Adams, Livingston, and Sherman. For 2 days, the assembly discussed the document and made edits. Jefferson was incredibly discouraged when a couple parts he considered very vital, such as his anti-slavery portion, were cut. However, they needed to cut this portion if they were going to have the southern states vote in favor of this document. If the southern states didn't vote, the colonies aren't in unity. If the colonies aren't in unity, this document makes little to no impact on any of the British legislator, British citizens, or other patriots. There were several other reasons, or a couple other things that were cut from the document. I looked, and apparently the internet has nothing. So, moving on. By July 4th, the changes had been made, and 12 out of the 13 colonies had voted in favor of this declaration. New York had not voted, as they were unsure of how their citizens would react to them signing for them this declaration, voting in favor for. The Committee of Five was put in charge of making sure this document was distributed to the colonies for reading, and they hired, in a sense, a local printer named John Dunlap to print the document. He got it done pretty fast, because by July 5th, the printed copies were finished and sent out to the colonies. July 8th, it was read in Philadelphia, where they rang the Liberty Bell after it was read. July 9th, it reached New York and was read to the Continental soldiers there. The soldiers and nearby citizens were, quote, moved by the words Jefferson had penned that they rushed down Broadway Avenue to tear down a statue of His Majesty King George III. It was later melted and made into bullets. I mean, it's precious metals. What'd you expect? This is where we come to the official signing and distribution, my apologies on that, of the Declaration. New York did finally put in a favorable vote for this declaration on July 19th. And on August 2nd, Sibley's birthday, the delegation came together to sign the new embossed version of the Declaration of Independence, hand-penned by one Timothy Matlack. Not all the signers had voted for the Declaration, and not all of the delegates signed. Robert Livingston, you remember this guy? He was on the Committee of Five. He did not sign the Declaration, as he had been recalled by the New York legislature. Instead, his cousin Philip Livingston signed in his place. Delaware delegate John Dickinson did not sign either, but his reason was a little more petty. He feared the repercussions from Great Britain. This embossed version has been kept and treasured for a while. I don't know the exact number, somewhere around 250 years. And this is the copy that you see today, if you happen by the National Archives in Washington, D.C. So what did the British think of all this? What were their thoughts? Well, let's put it plainly. They were horrified in polite terms. They refused to acknowledge this Declaration of Independence and thought of it as propaganda. All the more evidence for the insurrectionists to be hung in a British court of law. It was not until the end of the war, in 1783, that British citizens and legislators finally did acknowledge the colonies to be an independent country, and that the Declaration of Independence was, in fact, real and legitimate. So in conclusion, that is not the conclusion slide. There is no conclusion slide. How does this affect our personas? What ways can we incorporate something from this into our persona's thought process? What were they thinking? Are they a patriot soldier that is on fire for the colonies? Are they a British soldier horrified at this prospect of the colonies trying to be free? Are they an unsure citizen, not sure whether to be for the colonies or against, and this Declaration of Independence only makes that struggle worse. Regardless of who you are in your persona, try to incorporate it in. This is a big event that happened, and it impacted both those loyal to the king in the colonies and those that fought for freedom. What will you choose?